Okay, so I'm making the tare for the Tonkotsu Ramen meal coming in a couple of days. I'm making this ahead of time because it can sit in the fridge for up to 2 months. So in this recipe, and I've scaled this back down 1/4 by the recipe that I found. I've done a lot of research and most of it's about the same. So I found this great recipe and I scaled it down 1/4. So in this glass container here, I have a combination of koikuchi soy sauce, a Japanese soy sauce, usukuchi soy sauce. I have dashi, which is a fish stock type of fish stock. I have sake. There is some MSG, some fish sauce, some mirin, some salt, garlic, ginger, and green onion. And as always, I will put the measurements in the body of the video here in the text area. So what I'm going to do is pour this in my little my saucepan here, and I'm going to put it on the stove. I'm going to bring it up to a boil. I'm then going to turn it off and let it cool down for 3 hours. Then I'm going to put the lid on it, and I'm going to leave it out on the countertop until tomorrow. And then I'll put it in a mason jar and put it in the fridge. That's part one of the Tonkotsu Ramen meal. And so that'll be it. Tomorrow I'm going to get into the bones that I'm going to soak and do a whole lot of other things with. This is going to be a step-by-step process. I've done this a couple of times before, and when you do it on the stove, it takes about 18 hours. And I'm going to reduce that to about 6 using the pressure cooker, and we'll see what happens when we come back with that. But that's the first step, is the tare. And the tare, of course, is the seasoning of the pork bone broth. That is what tonkotsu is pork bones. And the broth won't be seasoned at all. We're just going to use, it's a ratio of 10-to-1 with the tare and the broth. So a typical ramen bowl will have about 300 milliliters of the soup and 10 milliliters or 30 milliliters of the tare sauce, and that's going to give it the salt. So this is pretty salty, but again, the bone broth has no seasoning whatsoever. It has some aromatics in it, but we'll get back to that when we come back the next time. So we'll see you then. Okay, it's day 2 of the ramen process. Now, last night, if you remember, I made the tare sauce, which sat on the counter overnight. I brought it up to a boil, removed it off heat, let it sit for 3 hours, then covered it. I got up this morning, and here it is. So I'm not sure how much this is in here. Maybe about a cup and a quarter. This should be about 10 bowls of ramen worth, the tare sauce. Remember, the tare is actually the salt seasoning of the tonkotsu broth. Again, when you boil the bones, you don't put any salt in it. So this is where you get your salt from. So that's done and complete. The next process is the actual bones. So here I've got 5 pounds of bones, I think 5.2. It's more than what was required in the recipe, but I want to yield more broth so I can put it in the freezer and I don't have to go through this process again, at least for another 10 bowls or so.
What kind of bones are you using?
These are, I have neck bones. Down in here, I've got neck bones and I have femur bones. And again, about 5.2. So what I did when I unpacked these bones is I rinsed them off. And you want to rinse them off of any type of blood or if there's any organs. And you want to do this prior to the boiling process. The boiling process is going to get rid of all the impurities, the blood, any extra fat that's on there, everything you don't want in the final product. So I actually put these in the fridge in cold water last night. I did an extra step. I just took them out and I rinsed them and just basically cleaned them of any, as you can see in the water. Can you show the water here, Donnie? Mm-hmm. You can see that there's still some blood. So this is the stuff that you don't want. So I'm going to actually put it back in to the fridge for another day and make sure that it's going to get any more of this out before I do the boiling of the bones. And the first 30 minutes or 40 minutes of boiling of the bones is to remove any impurities that are going to be left. And you will, anybody who's made any type of ramen broth knows that when you do the initial boil, it's going to have that scum that comes to the top. Those are the impurities that you don't want. You basically want your tonkotsu broth to be creamy, almost milky white. And remember, tonkotsu means pork bones. So I'm going to be doing a shoyu tonkotsu recipe today. So now that's in here, I'm going to do one little final rinse. And I'm going to put them in my little stock pot, and I'm just going to cover them and put them in the fridge. And when we come back to this tomorrow, you're going to see more like blood that's coming out of here. And that's what you want. So I'm going to put them all in here. You got it in here, Donnie?
Yep.
Okay. So this pot is perfect because I do need it. I do need to put it in the fridge, obviously, keep these bones fresh. And it'll be there overnight. And then tomorrow, I will start the boiling process. So that'll be the step for tomorrow. The next step in the tonkotsu ramen process will be the marinated soft boiled eggs. That'll be the next thing. I'll do that in a couple of hours. And that is something else that will sit in the fridge overnight. So if you ever had any kind of ramen that had an egg that was brown on the outside of the white, you know what, the white part of the egg, it's because it's been marinated in a soy sauce, mirin, sake, ginger, green onion, brown sugar, garlic, all those goodies give it that flavor. And you soak it marinated in that liquid for at least 6 or 8 hours, and then you can take it out of the marinade and just keep it in the fridge, and it'll stay nice and marinated and fermented. See, so you see here, you see still some of the impurities came out, and that's fat. I'm actually going to just rinse some of that out again because I want to get as much as I can out before I do the boiling. And if you've ever done this before, the first time I did this, it took, what was it, over 21 hours. I did it on the stove. The house stunk of funk. And I was up all night monitoring these bones. And I thought there's got to be a better way. And so decided that I'm going to use the Instant Pot. And I can reduce the time by 1/3. And let's see here. Where's my lid? Okay. So I'm going to put these into the fridge, and then we'll come back later on today when I do the marinated egg. It's called, I forgot the name. It starts with an A. When I do it, I'll get the name right when we come back. So we'll see you then. Okay, we're ready for the next segment about the Tonkotsu Ramen. So the first thing I'm going to make today for tomorrow is what they call menma, which is marinated bamboo shoots. Bamboo shoots come in many forms and textures. I like these little type of what they call like shoestring. They're good sizes, but you can get this in any form that you'd like. So I'm going to start off with about a tablespoon of sesame oil, maybe a little bit more. Okay. And to that, I got my heat up, I'm going to add some garlic, a little bit of garlic. I'm just going to use the squeeze out that I have. That's about good. And I'm just going to heat this up a bit. Let me get my little, oh, I have my What happened to my chopsticks? Donnie, did you put them someplace?
Nope.
Did you wash them?
Nope.
Okay. So something happened to my chopsticks. Where did they go? Oh, here they are. That was me. Sorry. Misplaced them. Okay, so I'm going to get this garlic. In fact, I'm going to put a little bit more. Okay. So I got this heat up high. And so this is another garnishment, of course, for ramen. And I'm going to get that going. So this is about all that I'm going to use. It's probably more than I'm going to use in my ramen. But, you know, like kimchi, you can always have this as a snack. Some different brands of bamboo shoots smell really funky, and if that's the kind that you do get, you never know sometimes until you open them up. You want to rinse your bamboo shoots out and just clean them out to get that funk out. To this, I am going to add about 1/3 of a cup of water. I'm going to add a tablespoon of soy, a tablespoon of mirin, okay, this thing needs to come up a little bit. Now, because I added the water, I'm also going to add a little bit. Now, you can add chicken stock instead of water, but because I have a chicken kind of like paste, that's why I added the water, to make the chicken stock. You don't need much. That's about all there is in that anyway. And you want to bring this to a boil. And it looks like this stove is going to take forever. You know, I have to say I really miss my gas stove. What do they call these stoves? These type of stoves?
Cooktops?
Yeah, these cooktops. They take so long to come up. And then once they do come up to the desired heat, it takes a long time for it to cook down. Not like a gas stove. You can turn them on and off. All right. So we'll come back in a minute when this thing is boiling. Sorry for the long wait here. Okay, so the bamboo shoots are done now. As you can see, most of the liquid evaporated. I really don't need the liquid at this point, so I'm just going to strain them here. And then I'm going to put them back into the container that I want them in, because they're going to go in the fridge once they cool down. And they'll sit there until we're ready to have ramen. Again, this may be more than what we're going to use for our actual bowl, but that's okay. Like kimchi, for those who know and like kimchi, you can eat it with anything as a snack. So there it is. I'm going to let this cool, and that's what you call menma. And when we come back the next time, I'm going to be, and that'll be today, I'll be doing the marinated eggs for the ramen. So we'll be back a little bit later. Okay, on to the next portion. So now I'm going to do what they call the ajisuki tamago eggs, marinated ramen eggs. So the first thing about eggs, when you boil eggs, you think about what do you do, or you put them in the water, they boil for however long, and you know, it comes out the way it does. So with ramen eggs, you really want your center of that yolk to be really soft, settled in what they call the cured egg. So there's a couple of ways of achieving that. And also, you remember, when you boil an egg and you peel it and you cut it, you'll notice that your yolk is either more on one side of the egg than the other. And there's a reason for that. So I've got 4 eggs here. And in each of these eggs, I used a little push pin and put a little hole. right there. So what that is, you know, in the egg, there's a little air pocket right there. If you ever peeled an egg, you'll always notice there's a little bit more shell. So putting the egg, poking the egg a little hole is going to release that pressure. And of course, no egg white, nothing comes out. And it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to make cracking the egg a lot easier, to peel it rather, and to ensure that the center of that yolk is actually in the middle of the egg. So that's the first part. And I've already poked the holes in them. Now the marinade of the egg consists of 3 components. Salt, sweet, and alcohol, which is soy sauce, sake, and mirin. So in this recipe here, I've got 1 cup of soy sauce, a half a cup of mirin, and a half a cup of sake. I put it on the stove, boiled it through. Now it's going to sit and cool down. This is what the eggs will be soaking in overnight. So you want to cure that egg. So if you cure your egg for 4 or 6 hours, it's going to be much different than if you cure it for 1 day or even 2. Either way, the yolk is going to cure a little bit more, but it still should always be soft. So I had my eggs out to room temperature before I took them out of the fridge. My water is boiling, and the right temperature is about 6 minutes, depending on whether you have an electric stove, a gas stove, or in this case a cooktop. It's all different, and the temperature, it's all about the temperature. If your egg even varies off, or the water temperature, by a few degrees, you're going to overcook your egg or undercook your egg. So it's all about perfection here. I've done this many times. I've screwed it up. Sometimes the egg just fell apart. Sometimes it was a little overcooked. I'm getting better at it. So the water's at a decent boil, and of course it's going to cool down once I drop the egg in. And I don't want to just drop it in. I want to lower it in. And for that first 30 minutes, the first 30 seconds, you really want to stir these eggs around a bit, because you want them to you want that center yolk to actually settle in there. Stirring them around kind of gets them used to the hot tub here, and centers the egg yolk in between. So I'm going to set the timer for 6 minutes. 6 minutes. And so now the boil came down a little bit. But it's at a good temperature. I think it's going to be fine. So at the end of 6 minutes, we'll come back and we'll take a look at the eggs and get them ready for the water bath. We'll put them in the water bath so that it stops the cooking, and also chills that egg, which makes that seal around the shell, which makes it a lot easier to pull that eggshell off without ruining the egg. So we'll be back in a bit. Okay, 6 minutes have passed by. They've gone. Here are my eggs. Immediately go into, not the hot tub, what do you call this? The swimming pool, the cool water. So it's in the swimming pool.
Ice bath.
Ice bath. And I'm gonna let them sit there for about 10 or 15 minutes. I want the eggs to cool down, and I want to be able to crack the egg and really peel the shell off the egg without really touching the egg whatsoever. So 10-15 minutes is really perfect to be able to easily take the shell off. Most people, when they say, I can't peel an egg, it's because you're peeling it too soon. You need to let it cool down and allow that membrane to actually adhere to the shell, and that's what comes off. There's that little membrane that comes off with the shell. So we'll be back in about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm going to open up the eggs, take them out of the shell, and then put them in the marinade. So we'll be back. Okay, I peeled the eggs, and here they are. I'm going to put them into the marinade. Now, as you can see, this one has a little, like it's flat. So what does that mean? That means the only thing I can think of was the egg may not be the freshest egg. Doesn't mean it's a spoiled egg, but it could be a little dated. Now, it's not going to change the taste, But that would probably be the reason you get an egg like this, especially since I poked the hole in. But that's okay. I'm gonna put them into the marinade. And as you can see, you know, they float, of course, and you know, you want these to get an even color all the way around. So the trick to that is to put a paper towel right over it. So you can see that it absorbs and then it colors, marinates the egg from all sides without having to do anything. So there's another one knocked out. I got the bamboo shoots, the marinated menma, and I have the ramen egg. I bought a pork chashu already pre-made because this is a lot of work. And Donnie and I go to this market in Cupertino called Marukai Grocery, wonderful Japanese store that you can get a lot of things you can get that you can't get that are in Hawaii. So that's why I love that place. So we drive about, 35 miles away just to go to that store. So the eggs are done. That's it for the ramen piece. Tomorrow I will begin the boiling of the bones, and that's going to be a 6-hour process. So we'll see you back next time. Of course, you'll see me later on today because now I'm going to finish my Chilean sea bass. I'm doing 2 meals at once. One for tomorrow, one for tonight. So we'll see you back. Okay, good morning, folks. So this is now day 2 of the Tonkotsu Ramen. And as you can see in here, I got a stock pot. And I have about 2 pounds of 2 pig trotters. And I have a combination of about 2 pounds of femurs, neck bones, and other parts. So with this tonkatsu, it's very important that it's all about the bones. So there is some meat that's on these bones, and I'm going to boil them. I'm going to boil them for about 45 minutes so we can get the impurities out of the bones. When it floats to the top, they call it scum. And we need to remove the scum, and then we need to rinse the bones. So this is the first process, and I've rinsed these bones overnight to get some of the blood out and anything else, fat also as well. So this is the first step, and I will rinse the bones afterwards, but we'll get to that point. My cameraman is not here today, so I'm going solo. So it may be a little difficult trying to film everything. I'm going to see if I can set my camera up at some point to be able to just let it sit, and so I can be part of the video here. So we'll be back in about an hour when the bones have boiled, and then I'll clean them all up before they go into the pressure cooker. So we'll see you back in a bit. Okay, so as you can see, this has only probably been 10 minutes since my start of this. As you can see, all what they call scum here is what you need to remove, and just let it go in a bowl of water. If my camera goes out of the way, it's because I'm trying to do 2 things at one time. Okay. Whoops. So this takes, again, about 40 minutes to get all the scum off. Once the scum is all gone, then you know the initial boiling of the bones is now complete. And then you rinse them off and scrub them and go to the next step. So I'm going to cut this off right here while I get the rest of the scum off, and then we'll be back. Okay, so the bones were blanching for about 35 minutes. I didn't need to go any more than that because putting the bones in the water the day before, and I changed the water probably 4 or 5 times, really cleaned the bones a lot before the parboiling. So the amount of scum that you saw was really about the gist of it. There wasn't much left after that. So the next process is to rinse these bones. And I'm going to clean them. I'm going to see if I can get rid of more stuff just by rinsing them this way, as well as getting into some of the nooks and crannies with the chopstick and getting rid of any other impurities, anything I don't want. I certainly, if there's any marrow in here in some of these femur bones, I want to keep it in here. So I can't do these with two hands, so I'm going to cut it off here, and I'll show you what the bones look like before I put them into the pressure cooker. So we'll see you back in a few minutes. Okay, so my bones are rinsed and cleaned, and what I cleaned was all of that. So all of this is meat, some cartilage that isn't necessary in this soup. There's no flavor in this meat. It's only going to darken the broth. So this is what I'm going into now with the pressure cooker. And I started out with about, I want to say close to 6.5 pounds of bones. And I ended up with almost 5 pounds of bones, which is fine. I'm also going to add some chicken feet. That's about 1.5 pounds. I cut the nails off of them. That's going to tone down the bone or the pork flavor. People say that if you do strictly pork bones, it can be a little just too porky, so you kind of tame it down with the chicken feet. Or you can use chicken wings or chicken backs. So I'm going to get ready for the crock pot. I'm going to get it ready for the pressure cooker, and we'll be back. Okay, so I'm out on the balcony. Decided to put the pressure cooker out here. And I got it set for 2 hours. So now it's going to preheat. So we'll come back in 2 hours, stir it up, move the bones around, and we'll do it for another 2 hours. So we'll see you back. Okay, so it's been 2 hours, and here's what my broth looks like at the moment, and this is the way it should look. I stirred it up, and I'm going to now put in my chicken feet, and it's going to go for another hour. So I'm going to cut it off here because I can't, well, let's see if I can. So there's the chicken feet. Stir it up. And I'm going to put it in for 1 more hour. Oops, sorry. My cameraman, he's not here. Okay, so I'll come back in an hour, and then I'll put in the fat back and the aromatics. Okay, so the hour went by, and here we are at this point. I'm stirring everything up. Okay, so now the next piece is going to be, or the next segment is going to throw in the aromatics. So I've got some shiitake mushrooms. There's a little green onion there. I'm trying to do this with one hand and hold the camera. I got a whole bunch of green onions. Throw in there. I also have some ginger. It's about 20 grams. I also have some garlic. And these are all weighted out grams, and I'll have that in the body of the description. Sorry for all the camera movement. And now the fat back. Okay, so now I'm going to put this in for 1 more hour. And when we come back, it'll be in 1 hour. So see you then. Boy, I wish my cameraman was here. There would have been a better video, but hopefully it'll turn out well. So there's my Instant Pot. I had to come back because I realized that I added the aromatics too early. So the fat back, I left in there. That has 1 more hour. When that is done, then the aromatics will go back in. And then there's a few other things that I will do to the fat back. So see you in a bit. Okay, so what I've done now is the hour was up. I took the lid off the pressure cooker. I removed the fat back that was in there. I put it in this blender with some of the tonkotsu broth and blended it in so that fat really dissolves. It's going to go back into the pressure cooker. I've added the aromatics into it as well. And the next step is to cook, to boil it rapidly until it's done at this point, but not to have the, I'm not going to have it on pressure mode. I'm just going to have it on continuing to boil. So I'm going to cut the video here and I'll go back and go outside there on the balcony. The reason why I did it on the balcony is because pork bones can smell. And until this is completely done, I'd rather not stink up the house. So we'll be back in a minute or two for the final process of the broth. And that could take an hour, it could take 2 hours. It's going to be to the consistency that the broth is white, creamy, and the right thickness. So we'll be back in a second. Okay, I put the fat back. When I mixed it with the broth, I put it back into the pot. I've adjusted my settings to be now on saute and on high. And now it's going to cook for a couple of more hours until it's the consistency that I want. You have to keep stirring it every so often. And so that's kind of where it's going to be. Now you see the little chunks of fat down there. I don't know if you can see the fat. That's exactly what we're looking for in the final completion of the broth. I'm going to emulsify it even more once everything is done and I strain the broth and the bones. I'll probably strain it twice, and I'll take an immersion blender and mix it all up. But at this point, it's got to come to a boil, and it could take an hour, it could take 2, we'll see. I'll take as long as it takes. We'll see how it goes. We'll be back in an hour. Okay, so as you can see, it's all come up to a boil, and I'm sure you can see the little steam is in there. It's in the way, but as you can see, the broth is starting to get the white colored milky white. So it's going to sit here for another hour. We'll check on it again. Finally, the final product. There you go. The eggs, the pork char siu, menma, fish cake. Awesome.